setting the stage for your Georgia Saturday. This is DawgNation GameDay, live from Jittery Joe's in Athens. Brought to you by R.S. Andrews, Kroger, Pella Windows and Doors, Cercheros, Lassiter Tractor, White's Pools, the UGA Bookstore, and Jittery Joe's Coffee. Now here's your host, Kaylee Mansell.
All right, take a look at Sanford Stadium one last time, because it's almost guaranteed this will be the last time the Dogs will play in it for the remainder of the season. And look at that, guys. You can just tell how cold it is. That picture is crispy right there, but still Sanford Stadium, beautiful as always. Excited to have clean, old-fashioned hate here in Athens tonight. DawgNation, welcome in. I'm Kaylee Mansell, and this is DawgNation Game Day, the show where we tell you everything you need to know about the game before it kicks off. It's going to kick off at 7:30 tonight, another night game for the Dogs, and I can't think of a better opponent to have a night game in Sanford Stadium against. One of the themes that we've talked about all week long on DawgNation is that despite the fact that Georgia has been on the right side of this rivalry for many years now, there's something in the air that feels different about this game, whether it's the comments from the coaches and the players or the attention that this game is getting, specifically because it is on a Friday night. You have to notice it, especially the comments that Brent Key has made that we're going to listen to a little bit later in the show. You can tell that Georgia Tech wants this more than any other team in the country. I actually found out today that they are going to pay Brent Key an extra $100,000 if Georgia Tech were to upset Georgia tonight. I wanted to call Brandon Adams as soon as I heard that, because I knew that he would find that just as comical as I did. So if that's not motivation for them to try to pull off the upset, I don't know what is. But I think the Dogs get it done tonight. Listen, guys, you got to get excited about it. It's cold, it's a Friday, but I do believe that the Friday night brings a little bit of different juice to this game. When it was first announced that they were going to do it on a Friday night, I just wasn't sure how I felt about that. That's a Saturday game in my mind, but again, I think it brings a lot of national attention to this game. It's going to follow the Egg Bowl. A lot more people will be paying attention, especially too because now the Dogs are on high alert. They're going to make the SEC championship regardless, but what happens if they make it and things go wrong? You've got to win tonight's game to guarantee you that extra spot, but I think Kirby has these Dogs ready for one of the greatest rivalries all throughout UGA's course of history. Why don't we show you what we've got going on today's DawgNation Game Day show. Starting with, in just a few minutes, we're going to bring in Davin Bellamy, and he's going to tell us what UGA has to do to stop the run, what this rivalry game means to him, and maybe talk about some of those connections between the game that are making it a little bit more spicy this year. And now, for the first time, we saw it with UGA's latest commit, Chase Linton, that Georgia and Georgia Tech are finally starting to push towards the middle on the recruiting trail, which is something we haven't seen in a long time. Is that a trend that DawgNation's going to have to get used to? We'll talk to Jeff Santel about that. And then later in the show, we'll bring on Connor Riley, who's going to give us an idea of if some of Georgia's starters will be back. There's no availability report tonight because it is not an SEC game, so they don't have to provide one, but get an update on Dylan Bell, Trevor Etienne, and then maybe find out if the Dogs are just going to pull something out of nowhere and wear black, a blackout in Sanford Stadium, something that Georgia fans have been begging for all along. We'll get to Connor Riley, and he'll give us more on that later. But let's start with the opponent. Georgia Tech's a program that over the last 20 years has been really, really, really rocky. They've been through a lot of coaches, but it seems that they finally found their guy in Brent Key, and we've got to give flowers to him because I really feel like he's bringing this program on the up and up in a conference that isn't so much as difficult as the SEC, but still they're becoming a notable team, upset Miami a few weeks ago. So now they've put themselves on spotlight, and also they want to beat Georgia. They've made that very evident this weekend. It starts with the head coach, Brent Key. Here's Brent Key's comments on Georgia following their win last week against NC State.
Coach, you're obviously very passionate when it comes to Georgia. Would you say your players are just as passionate?
Huh? Passionate about them?
Yeah.
I'm passionate about Georgia Tech.
No, Georgia.
I'm not passionate about Georgia.
Okay. All right.
Not one bit.
Okay.
I'm passionate about playing them.
Okay.
I'm passionate about those guys in the locker room.
So would you say your players are equally as passionate about playing them?
It's the next game. Come on. No, I mean, we came in the locker room and we got things we got to clean up tomorrow. We got things we have to correct. We'll be out tomorrow. And look, we have the biggest game of the year coming up. It's in-state rivalry game, and that's what it's about, rivalry games.
All right, here's the thing that you need to pay attention to. He claims that this game is the biggest game of the year for them. And for Tech, this is their Super Bowl. They've got no chance of making the playoff, no chance of making the ACC Conference Championship. They're going to get a bowl game because they have a winning season this year. But this is the Super Bowl for Georgia Tech. This is the thing they've looked forward to most of the season. This is how they can leave their legacy on college football, by looking good tonight or potentially, in their minds, pulling off the upset. And when you look back at Brent Key, he is a coach that actually went to the school that he's coaching at. So I think that's why he has this passion for playing Georgia and not passion for Georgia. He was a 4-year starter at Georgia Tech in his time there. And when he was playing at Tech was 3-1 against Georgia. He lost to Georgia his freshman year there. Then Georgia Tech went on to win 3 games. And that last year that he played for Tech was in 2000. Well, since 2000, Georgia Tech has only beaten Georgia 3 times. So he was on the tail end of the right side of being a Georgia Tech fan and being on that team, to now they've only beaten Georgia 3 times since the year 2000, so I can understand that hatred that he has for them. One thing we'll talk to Davin Bellamy about here in just a minute is you've got a Georgia coach in Kirby Smart who played for the Georgia Bulldogs, and a Georgia Tech player in Brent Key who is now coaching Georgia Tech, and so that's why this game means so much to both guys, because they've both been in this situation before. And I don't know if there are many other rivalry games that are going to happen this weekend where you can see something like that. But all this to be said, Brent Key has improved the Georgia Tech program so much in the short amount of time that he's been there. Some things have changed for them. Let's show you what Georgia Tech's doing that is getting them some national attention, starting with the fact that they're going to have back-to-back winning seasons for the first time since 2013 and 2014. And then they're also ranked top 50 nationally in total offense as well as total defense. They've only allowed 5 sacks on the year, which has them tied for second in all of the FBS. Now, part of that is because they do run the ball so much that they don't spend a lot of time in the pocket, so that kind of does skews the numbers a little bit, but still something to be impressed by. And then they've only committed 7 turnovers on the year, 4th in the FBS. And so you know that they're going to play a clean game. They're not going to make a lot of mistakes. So you have to attack their run game as well as you can, because that's the way to secure the success against them. But you got to give Brent Key his flowers, because he has turned this program around, and they look like they are headed in the right direction. But keep in mind, they're still the little brother in this state. Now, one thing that Georgia Tech's going to do a little bit differently, we've seen it over the last 2 weeks, is right now they're playing 2 quarterbacks at the moment. If you'll remember, Haynes King earlier this season went down with a shoulder injury, so Georgia Tech had to propel true freshman quarterback Aaron Philo into the starting role. And last week, they decided to play both of those quarterbacks. We've got the comparison of the numbers between the two here. We'll show you this on the screen. Right now, Haynes King has over 72% completion, which is 4th in the FBS. He's got over 1,600 passing yards, 9 touchdowns, only 1 interception on the year. But what Haynes King does really, really well is running the ball. And then on the other side, you have Aaron Philo, the true freshman, who 51% completion, 565 passing yards, 1 touchdown, 2 interceptions, and 76 rushing yards. But here's the thing. So Haynes King went down with the injury. He started the last 2 weeks for this team, and he's second on the team in rushing, and he's the second best rushing quarterback in the ACC. I imagine that we're going to see him do a lot more of that today, because we're not exactly sure how healthy his shoulder is. He's been the running quarterback for Georgia Tech, while Philo, on the other hand, he didn't play a meaningful snap for this Tech team until week 9. However, he played more snaps in last week's game against NC State than Haynes King did, and he also played some against Miami. Now, we do have to point out that there is like a rumor mill kind of thing going around that there's potential that they may sit Aaron Philo out tonight because he's played in 4 games this year and they want to redshirt him, but there's no good source on this, no good connection. It's just something that's floating around on the internet, but I think it's very evident that Brent Key wants to bring his best in this game, and if he wants to bring Georgia Tech's best, then he's going to have to play both of those guys. Now, I expect Haynes King to play a lot more just because he is more experienced in big games like this. He performed really well against Georgia last year when it was at Georgia Tech, so I don't think it's going to be like last week's case where you see more Philo than King. I definitely think King's going to play more of those meaningful snaps, especially because he is more of the rushing quarterback, but don't expect to see Aaron Philo sitting out today. But in the crazy wild case that he is, then that's why, and I guess maybe the rumor mill was right, but don't believe everything you see on the internet. If you take away anything from the show, that's what you need to learn. So obviously you have to prepare for playing a dual quarterback system a different kind of way, and Kirby Smart was asked about this earlier this week in his press conferences. This is what Kirby Smart had to say on pacing 2 quarterbacks.
Regardless of the quarterback, the importance is to strike, play physical, understand what you're getting yourself into in terms of what kind of game this is going to be. So before you even know who the quarterback is, you got to know what kind of game it's going to be. And it's going to be physical. It's going to be tough. And you got to play good football, you got to swarm. Like good defensive football, you got to swarm and tackle well. So it's all about us and not just about the quarterback. But that will be a key ingredient. That they know that too. You know, so, I mean, Philo can run. He ran the other night, and they ran design runs with him. He can do those things. And, you know, King is a really good player that got after us last year. So we know what they're capable of. And Buster was here. So both staffs know a lot about each other.
So it looks like the word sworn was used very intentionally there by Kirby Smart. I will say, though, I think he does have the advantage in knowing these 2 quarterbacks very well. Saw what Haynes King could do last year, but also Aaron Philo went to school right up the street at Prince Avenue. I feel like this is a guy that Kirby knows him really well. He is the all-time passing yards leader in GHSA, so that's definitely something worth noting, and I'm sure the Dawgs took notice of that as well. And even though Philo ended up at Tech, this is a guy that Kirby is very familiar with, has seen, he knows the best of his game. So even though there is 2 quarterbacks that they could potentially be facing tonight, I think that Georgia has the advantage and the upper hand just because of the familiarity with them. But still, we want to bring in Davin Bellamy here in just a minute to see how does practice look different, how does the prep look different for when you face 2 quarterbacks. Now, in just a minute, we're going to get Davin Bellamy online, but first we want to remind you that here on DawgNation GameDay, we are brought to you by Jittery Joe's. Guys, I feel like the last 3 weeks, it gets busier and busier and busier. Since the moment that we got here at 3:30, there has been a line out the door. It's cold out there. There's still time to come in, stop by, say hello to us, grab you some hot chocolate, coffee, whatever your warm drink fix is. It truly is the best, so stop by and get it. But also, we want to remind you guys that Jittery Joe's is now also doing franchising opportunities. So if you want to start your own Jittery Joe's wherever you're at, you can find out more online at jitteryjoes.com. And, of course, don't forget about the commemorative cans they have from the National Championship 2021 and 2022 seasons. I have one at my house that gets complimented all the time. It's a great holiday gift. So make sure to check out Jittery Joe's for franchising opportunities, where you can find their commemorative cans. And, as always, don't forget to download that Jittery Joe's app so you can get half off your first drink as well as skip the line, which you would definitely need tonight if you came in. All right, with that, let's go ahead and get our favorite guest on the show, Davin Bellamy, on. We just heard Kirby Smart speak about the swarming the quarterback no matter who it is, but in your time at Georgia, was there ever a point where you had to face a 2-quarterback system? And if so, how does practice and prep work look different throughout the week for you?
Yes, I mean, I think I remember Florida did it at one point in time, but the 2-quarterback system, honestly, it's more easier for the defense, in my opinion, because if you have 2 quarterbacks, then you don't have one. And usually one is better at passing and one is better at running. So the defense now knows if this guy's in the game, then we have a higher percent chance of getting a pass. And if this guy's in the game, then we have a higher percent chance of getting a run. So in my opinion, it doesn't really bring a big thing unless we're talking about Tua and Jalen Hurts, you know. So Yeah, we'll see tonight.
I'm going to act like you didn't make that comment for the sake of DawgNation. I remember being there at that game and that happening, and that was it still blows my mind. Ugh. Anyway, so on top of all of this, like with practice being maybe a little bit different in the sense that it's a short week for Georgia. Georgia Tech played last Thursday, so they got an extra day versus Georgia, who's had an even shorter week. How does practice look different when you've got a short week like this?
You know, in my opinion, usually a Georgia practice is very, physical, but we do have a short week. We have some guys banged up. And I just think last week against UMass, excuse me, our guys were just, tired. So I think coach is going to use this week, just to get the big boys up front, get them fresh, because it's going to be a physical game. So in my opinion, I don't think coach really pushed them and had that very physical week of practice that Georgia usually has, mostly because it's more about health.
Yeah, I definitely think rest is something that's going to come into consideration today, especially with some of those starters like Trevor Etienne and Dylan Bell, where we're not exactly sure where they're at in the week. I think rest is really important for those guys, especially in regards to the SEC championship next week. But one of the things that we talked about off the top of the show is there's a different feel to this game, and I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that both of the coaches for Georgia and Georgia Tech have played in this game before, and I think it might bring a little bit more emotion and personal feelings to this game than we've ever seen before.
Well, yes, of course. I mean, you got two coaches that, really understands how important this rivalry is, not just to the players, but also to the fan base. It's going to be bragging rights on Monday mornings and stuff like that. So the players kind of understand that, and they always want to play well for their fan base. But then you got to also realize, too, Georgia Tech has beaten a good team this year in Miami, so they're not coming in intimidated. And also this year, Georgia has looked vulnerable at some times, where it just doesn't look like when you watch the tape how we're going to beat that team. We have showed flaws, and I think when you got that mixed in with Georgia Tech finally thinking this is a Georgia team that we can sneak our win in, it adds a little bit more fierce to it.
So when you were a Bulldog, you actually, part of the reason that you came back in your senior year was because y'all had lost to Tech the year before. How real is that hatred for the Jackets, and do you think that still exists within the team today?
I mean, it's very real. It may be a little different because Mark Richt was kind of on the hot seat, so he made an emphasis on beating Tech. We have to beat Tech. So, but I just think with Coach Smart being a former player, the guys understand the importance of this game. It's bragging rights for the state. You want to have that Governor's Cup in your locker room, and also the winning team always does something messed up to the field. I can remember beating Georgia Tech and ripping their plants up and planting the flag in the middle of the G, and them beating us in Athens and tearing off the hedges. So you don't never want to see that on either side. So I definitely think both teams still have that hatred in them.
On the subject of rivals, I'm going to give you four. I'm going to give you Florida, Tennessee, Auburn, and Georgia Tech. Can you rank them 1 through 4 in terms of absolutely hate to semi-tolerate?
Okay, you said 4, right? Well, the first one is for sure Tennessee. Just 2 years, you got the Hail Mary, and then I just remember Nick Chubb getting hurt and them having a round of applause, and that was just always icky to me. And I say Tennessee is number 1. Tech is number 2. And what was the last 2 teams you gave me? You said Florida and what else?
Florida and Auburn.
I'm going to go Auburn, Florida.
I think that's a fair answer. In the spirit of rivalry week, we had to figure out where everybody lined up,
And you got to understand, it's the Auburn is the team that beat us when we were the number 1 team in the nation. So we always wanted to get them back in the SEC championship game. And when they beat us, they just rubbed it in. So that kind of adds to that one too.
All right, well, we'll get back on the subject of Georgia Tech. We're gonna talk about the defense in just a second, but just kind of an update on where your head's at with Carson Beck. I do feel like we've seen the most consistency from him out of the last 2 weeks, when maybe we thought that Ole Miss game was the last chance that we could see the best of him, but he's looked like a completely different quarterback, a completely different person on the sidelines in these last 2 weeks. How confident are you that Carson Beck can carry this consistency with him next week in the SEC championship and potentially really far into the college football playoffs?
I'm very, confident in him, especially if the pieces around him continue to play the way they've been playing. Our running game has been well the last 2-3 weeks. Our pass pro has been really good. And one thing we know about, Carson Beck, when he has a clean pocket, he's one of the best throwers of the football in, the league. So if the pieces around him continue to, not make him feel like he has to put on the cape and throw the ball 35 times a game, and we just continue to get our tight ends involved and have the easy throws for him, I continue to see the same move we've been getting. I kind of think they found their groove a little bit, and I want to continue to see that.
All right, we're going to move on to my Mansell's matchup of the week, because it does revolve around the Georgia defense. It feels like we've done this story before, but this time it's going to be all about the Georgia Tech run game versus the Dawgs run defense. Now, Georgia Tech's run game has been really strong this year. I think this is what they do well: 180 rushing yards per game, 26 rushing touchdowns this year, which is second in the ACC. They have 37 attempts per game. They're going to run the ball more than they pass the ball. Now, the Dawgs stats on the other side, you see it. They've allowed 124.5 yards per game, which is ninth in the SEC, really low. And then 11 rushing touchdowns on the year, 29 sacks. But here's the thing about Georgia Tech. They've got a great running quarterback. They've got a great running back in Jamal Haynes, who's 11th in the ACC for rushing. He's had 2 100-yard rush games. When you look at the Georgia Tech offense and their keys to victory this year, their average rush yards in their wins has been 230, and their average rush yards in their losses has been 92 yards. So when we do all the math and you put it all on paper, it seems that they need at least 190 rush yards per game to be able to secure a victory, unlike Georgia, who hasn't been on the right side of the run game but still has found a way to win games. I think that's the biggest difference between these two teams. Now, the Georgia run defense has really struggled in the last 2 games, especially against a UMass team in which they gave up over 250 rushing yards to one of the worst teams in the FBS. Do you think that this is still a Georgia run defense who's been battle-tested throughout the SEC that can actually put a stop to the run tonight, or is it going to have to be a shootout-type game where the offense carries more?
Well, in my opinion, I don't think Coach Smart is going to allow 2 performances like that back-to-back weeks from his D-line, including Trey Scott, who, I was a part of his room, also, who I spent a lot of my time with. I'm pretty sure those guys tonight, they've heard all week at practice about their performance last week, so I guarantee you they'll be ready to stop the run, tonight, because the run is not about the X's and O's. It's just about how physical do you want to be. It's kind of something that you can't teach. You can teach the technique, but I can't teach you the ferociousness to do it. So they're going to answer the call tonight, and with Georgia Tech, they make it tricky because they do the spread. They incorporate the RPO, and with the quarterback also being able to run the read option, it puts the defensive end kind of in a pickle. Do I take the dive? If I do take the dive, then King pulls it and runs it. But then they also can pull it and run it and throw it behind you. So I think Coach just does a great job of making everything look similar, and it slows up the linebackers a little bit where they can't trigger as fast. So, but this is the game that Georgia usually doesn't have 2 games back-to-back, and I expect just a shutout from our defense.
You mentioned the idea of answering the call, and I think your DB's big dog of the week is someone who could answer the call tonight, because I think that he played his best game last season, and that's going to be Arian Smith, our DB's big dog of the week. He's had a rough season with drops, but this year, on the year, 695 yards. He's still the team's leading receiver, 4 touchdowns. He was one of my impact players for last week, and I said that I thought that he needed to have a confidence-boosting game because some of those go balls that they tried to give him early, he had been dropping throughout the season, but last week seemed really secure in that, and I think that Georgia should try and take some shots early. I think Arian Smith, what he did last week, I think that momentum and confidence carries through him today, and we see another stellar game from Arian.
Yeah, no doubt. He's one of the fastest players in college football, so he can definitely take the top off the defense. I think, what we always talk about is Georgia hitting those home runs. Well, he's our home run guy, and, he makes the game easier for Carson because when there's not a lot of trust on the outside, Arian Smith is one of those guys who can go and get it. So the better he plays, that means our running game is doing well. And I mean, Carson Beck is doing well. So he definitely just gets the things going.
All right, Davin. Well, we will look forward to seeing you on the Dog Nation postgame show with Brandon Adams.
All right. See you later. Go Dogs.
I'll give him a go, Dogs, back in the spirit of clean, old-fashioned hate. Now, let's talk about some more players that I think will need to answer the call today in what's going to be the last game in Sanford Stadium. Here are my impact players of the week. It's going to start with the defensive side of the ball, and it's going to be Malachi Starks, which it's really sad to think that this is going to be his last game in Sanford. What he's done in his time at Georgia is absolutely miraculous. 55 tackles on the year, 1 interception, 2 pass deflections. He leads the team in tackles, which should come as no surprise because he is the captain and the leader of the defense. Even though Tech is primarily a running team, I think that Brent Key is going to want to get ahead early, so I could see them taking some shots early on, and I think Georgia should look to their best safety to go ahead and shut those down. And I think that Malachi's going to want to have that sentimental, really good last game in Sanford. I would even go as far as to say expect an interception for tonight from Malachi Starks. That's going to be my hot take of the night. But my defensive impact player is going to be Malachi Starks. Now we're going to move on to the next one, which is going to be Oscar Delp. We're finally seeing the best of him, as well as tight ends as a whole. 192 yards on the year, 3 touchdowns. And here's the thing, he didn't have a single touchdown all season, but he suddenly had 3 in the last 2 games, the 2 versus Tennessee and last week versus UMass. One of the storylines that we discussed over the summer was who is going to be that go-to guy for Beck. And after so many games, it felt like that hadn't been answered yet. And as of late, it seems that maybe that guy is becoming Oscar Delp. The tight end room is playing really strong in general right now. We had really high hopes for them at the beginning of the season. They weren't meeting that expectation. But Delp, the progress that he's made since that Florida game, it can't go unrecognized. It can't go unnoticed. I expect to see that momentum continue today for Oscar Delp. Last impact player, it's going to be Carson Beck, another guy who is going to be playing his last game in Sanford Stadium today. I think for him, it's all about a strong finish. We're not exactly sure if he's going to have all the right tools and pieces around him, like Etienne Dillon Bell. This year, 3,100 yards on the year, 23 touchdowns, 12 interceptions, but those turnovers have rapidly decreased since that Florida game. He's looked really, really good at home, and maybe that's exactly what he needed, was to come back in Sanford, play in front of a home atmosphere, an electric crowd, and gain some of that confidence back. And we are seeing him play his absolute best ball right now, and it couldn't come at a better time. He's got to finish it strong here tonight versus Georgia Tech, take it with him next week to the SEC Championship, then give him a break until Georgia starts the playoffs. Carson Beck didn't really start strong, but he has an opportunity to finish strong against one of Georgia's biggest rivals tonight. So when we come back from the break, we'll take a deeper look at some of those coaching connections between Georgia and Georgia Tech, as well as sit down with Jeff Sentell to talk about the similarities on the recruiting trail. This is DawgNation Game Day. We'll be back in 60 seconds.
Nothing makes a house feel more like a home than quality windows. So trust the professionals at Pella Window and Door of Georgia. We'll equip your home with energy-efficient windows and doors just right for you. Schedule your free in-home, no-pressure consultation. Get product samples, installation options, and a free quote Log on to PellaGA.com and visit our new Experience Center in Duluth. Tell them Brandon Adams sent you. Pella Window and Door of Georgia, viewed to be the best.
There's never been a better time to put in a new luxury pool. From custom designed concrete and finishes, we can build the dream pool to turn your backyard into a vacation destination.
When my wife and I decided to get a swimming pool, we knew we had to go with the best at White's Pools. They made the process real simple for us. We got a chance to design exactly what we wanted. It was great for our family. We're enjoying it every day.
White's Pools has been the ultimate choice for thousands of homeowners in Atlanta. Visit us online and book your custom pool design today.
DawgNation GameDay. It's sponsored by R.S. Andrews, Kroger, Pella Windows and Doors, and the UGA Bookstore.
DawgNation, welcome back to DawgNation Game Day. If you're just now joining us, we are here at the downtown Jittery Joe's location. It's not too late to come join us, or you can come join us at the UGA Bookstore directly following the game. Look, clean old-fashioned hate is all about familiarity, whether it's between Dawg and Jacket fans in the same family or in the same workplace or former high school teammates facing off. But this year, the commentators are less on the player side and more on the coaching side. Cody Chaffins has more.
This year's version of Clean Old-Fashioned Hate features a trio of coaches who have both red and black and white and gold polos hanging in their closets. Georgia has two coaches on its roster who were once on the flats, and Tech's offensive coordinator Buster Faulkner spent time on staff in Athens. Faulkner didn't have nearly as prominent a role for UGA when he was there as an offensive quality control coach for 3 seasons, but his impact was felt.
Buster was incredible in terms of insight, ideas, work habits, recruiting. He recruited really hard while he was here. He was very loyal. He didn't try to overstep his boundaries, which when you're in that role, sometimes as an analyst, which he was here, you have to be careful because you're trying to assert yourself and prove that you're a good coach, but you don't want to overstep the other coaches. And his rules while he was here was to coach the coaches and help us. And he did a tremendous job of that. He made me a better coach, and he's also a great father and husband as well.
And Faulkner's current boss echoes that praise, appreciating that Faulkner's been able to keep the Jackets on track as injury has forced his veteran starter to miss time and forced a true freshman quarterback into action.
That's what makes Buster a good coach. I mean, he's not tied into one system. We're not tied into any one system here. I say it every weekend, to the staff. All right, all schemes are personnel driven.
The two current UGA coaches who were at Tech are on opposite sides of the ball. Former Tech defensive coordinator Andrew Thacker is in an analyst role for UGA.
Yeah, he does a great job. He's got a lot of energy, enthusiasm. Defensively, he's been great for our defense in terms of energy, excitement. Players really like him. He does a great job of knowing his role, of defining his role and being very helpful, and he's been a big asset for us.
Georgia also has former Tech wide receivers coach Josh Crawford coaching up their running backs. Crawford, like Faulkner on the other side, has been forced to get his freshmen ready in a hurry thanks to injuries to upperclassmen.
Yeah, I don't know many people that have had to go out and play with 3 true freshmen in a critical, pivotal game, which really happened against Tennessee. And those kids didn't flinch. He didn't flinch. You prepare year-round to have them ready for a moment like that. He's done that. He's very intelligent and does a good job demanding excellence from those kids, and that's a big part. And he was a really good high school coach in the state as well, which I think is big.
On the field, there's one player who knows both sides. E.J. Lightsey was a linebacker at UGA, but is now at Tech, and he feels the same way that surely all of the coaches feel facing their old teams.
The mentality, just like it is every other week, we try to go and get a win. But this one's gonna be great for sure. Big rivalry, old school, and like we say, state championship. So I'm just ready to make it a Friday and come out with a win.
For DawgNation, I'm Cody Chaffins.
So, even though this year the majority of the connections are through the coaches, moving forward, Dawg Nation, it's not going to be like that anymore. Now that Georgia Tech has picked up some momentum, them and Georgia are going after a lot of the same in-state recruits. Here's Jeff Sintel with more.
All right, it's time for Intel here on DawgNation GameDay. Clean, old-fashioned hate week. Where do you put Tech in your group of rivals?
Caught some heat about this for what we said on Before the Hedges this week, because I have Tech too low. And I had a lot of old school folks reach out, and they told me about Coach McGill and Coach Hartman that would always wear these buttons during hate week that says 2 HE double hockey sticks with Tech. I still don't think Tech's in my top 3. My top 3 most biggest Georgia rivalries, I think you got to beat the Dogs and trade punches with them to be considered a rival. Unfortunately, my first team will blow that logic out of the water because it's Florida, but I'm thinking historically there because I lived through a time in my life, Kaylee, where Georgia lost 13 out of 14 times to those mighty Gators, those lousy, stinking Gators in Jacksonville. So that's one of those, which will always be a rivalry to me.
I think one of the fascinating things about this game is how the teams are interconnected, because even though they're in-state rivals, they haven't really had many recruiting battles just because Georgia is the superior program. So they haven't gone after a lot of the same guys, or, you know, there hasn't been somebody that's picked Tech over Georgia. But the way that these programs are connected is through coaching staffs.
Yeah, that's a good point because, you know, there's so much history between the coaching staffs, and you're talking about like Faulkner there, and you're talking about, you know, Brent Key and Kirby Smart back in their Alabama days, Josh Crawford. But, you know, the thing that really sticks to me is, you know, somebody asked me this question, and eventually it will happen because now this is unheard of. Georgia actually flipped a player away from Tech, Rayshawn Jenkins, in this class. And normally we don't see that. I feel like I've got to go back to, like, I want to say Morgan Burnett, Cap Burnett. I feel like I've got to go back late 2000s to legitimately sit there and say, that's a player that Georgia and Georgia Tech both wanted, at least during the Kirby Smart era, that Tech ended up getting. So, like, you know, the recruiting wars are what they are. I mean, eventually Tech's probably going to reach that point. I mean, with what they're doing now, they're paying $800,000 a year to high school offensive linemen. They'll eventually beat Georgia in a recruiting battle with a financial motivation quite like that.
So there will be visitors on the scene because it's presumably the last game of the season that will be played in Sanford Stadium. When I look at the list, I think the one that stands out is somebody who's a part of the hometown crowd, the 3-star quarterback who's currently committed to Boise State. It's Hezekiah Millender. He's visiting for the second time this season, and Georgia really wants another quarterback in this class. And I feel like when you've got a quarterback that's visited Georgia 2 times pretty recently, that's typically a really good sign.
Yeah, I mean, especially he could walk down Baxter to Sanford. You know, in the story we reported earlier this week is, you know, he moved from Arizona to the state of Georgia because he wanted to be exposed to the SEC. Well, he just happened to catch the attention of the top dogs of the SEC in Georgia. And, you know, he came to the state of Georgia with a Boise State offer. He's still Boise State commit, but the Dogs definitely have given him a lot to think about, and we know that backstory. Like, he wanted to improve his recruiting options, and he's done so now. And his dad won't have to move. His mom, I'm told, still lives in Atlanta. She also moved to Atlanta from Arizona. So there's a lot of juice there. Now, other things, Kayla, I got to mention, you know, there might be some quarterback dominoes happening. The news that broke earlier this week is Mack Brown will not be back in North Carolina. So, Kaylee, if you know recruiting, like I think you know recruiting, everybody's going to start raiding North Carolina's treasure chest of recruits, and that includes a really elite quarterback, highly rated quarterback as well. So, like, what happens if somebody flips that guy, and what happens if maybe Georgia takes a look at that guy? But the main thing is, like, the quarterback dominoes. When someone that gets flipped, somebody else goes after that quarterback. So I think this feels really neat and tidy right now if Georgia can just land Hezekiah Melinder out of Clark Central. Dave Perno, the former Georgia baseball coach, is his head coach there. So this is one of those definitely to watch as the signing day intrigue rolls on.
And another person on this list is going to be the 4-star defensive lineman, Kevin Wynn, an in-state recruit who's currently committed to Florida State. He will be making a visit this weekend. Georgia's already got a pretty dominant defensive line class for 2025. There's potential that they might add another pretty dominant guy in the class of 2025, but I do feel like Kevin Wynn could just be the cherry on top of it all.
Wow, I mean, if you could add the 2 or 3 more names you're talking about here, Kaylee, Georgia could maybe line Bozo the Clown up at safety, and they could still have a pretty good defense in 2006 and 2007, but 2026 and 2027. Let me get my mind right here. But, you know, for all those things, Kevin Wynn is a bona fide game wrecker. I love that term with him because his coach told me that nobody has blocked him man-on-man blocking in about 2 years. Everybody doubles him, everybody triples him. And we also remember Kevin Wynn wants to be Chef Wynn when his playing days are over. He wants to run a restaurant. He wants to cook his own food. We're going to call it Justo Slick's Place right now because he wants to have, you know, white linen tablecloths on Sundays. He wants to have good American food on Friday night and Saturday night. And he gets it, Kaylee, because he already knows his plan when he's 35, 36 years old. His real ambition in life is to own his own restaurant.
I love that.
And also, will the last commitment in Florida State's class turn the lights off?
Yeah, that's the real storyline here. We buried the headline that Florida State's lost so many of their commits. So my last question to you is going to be all Dogs. They're playing their best football right now. Things have kind of lined up in a way for them that I think benefits them. Got the playoff rankings. Is this a Georgia team that can really win a national title? Like, honestly.
Yeah, I think now with the bracket favoring itself, and Georgia gets in the SEC, and then they win the SEC, and they get that week off, and they get a lot of folks healthy. Kaylee, I want you to imagine that. I want you to imagine Georgia's first playoff opponent, and it would be in the second round, and they might have Colby Young at wide receiver. They might have Branson Robinson, Trevor Etienne, and Roderick Robinson at running back, not to mention Nate Frazier. All of a sudden, Georgia's got a very impressive 3 or 4-headed monster at running back. They've got another weapon at wide receiver. And I want to come back to this about Carson Beck. The reason why I say that is because Carson Beck, I feel like, has his mojo back. No matter what wild rumors you guys are seeing on Facebook.
All you Facebook people.
But Kaylee, I'm going to say this. This is something our colleague Connor Riley, this is a stat he likes to go to a lot. This is a Connor Riley go-to stat. And he says all the time that NFL teams they're cautious about taking college quarterbacks in the first round that haven't started more than one season. So think about this. This year for Carson, Kaylee, everything he's learned, the ups and the downs, not having Brock, not having Ladd, it looks like he's got his juice back. And all of a sudden, you realize why it's important for NFL franchises to invest in a quarterback that has had 30 starts, for example, maybe more so than 13 or 14 starts, because you learn so much more about yourself, and you learn and you grow as a competent, kind of a leader of a team, leader of a program. And I think Carson has definitely done that, where he's went through his peaks and valleys, and now it looks like he is back to playing the football that we thought he was capable of playing all season long.
Yeah, if we see that version of Carson Beck today, they are going to dominate this rivalry game. Thanks for sitting with me, Jeff.
All right, and speaking of Connor Riley, it's time to bring in our DawgNation insiders. Connor, before we talk ball, I have some very important questions. Number one, you are already at the stadium. Is Georgia wearing black?
No, they're not yet wearing black. We'll see if they ultimately do that, but as of right now, no indications that they're going to wear black tonight.
Right. The other very, very, very important journalistic question I have for you is, it's rumored that the Dogs were taken to see Gladiator 2 last night in the movie theaters. You yourself have already seen Gladiator 2. Is that the kind of movie that motivates you to just have that extra oomph in today's game?
I think so. This Georgia team is no one's instrument but their own, and so they look forward to, I think, unifying this Georgia fan base for the people of Georgia. And really look forward to going out there and playing. The odds are always against them, it seems, but I think this is a Georgia team certainly motivated by the work of Paul Mescal as Lucius in Gladiator 2.
Yeah, I would like to see the Dogs go full Paul Mescal on Georgia Tech tonight. All right, let's talk about some players because we need an update on Trevor Etienne, Dylan Bell, potentially the Robinsons, and maybe Colby Young. I know you don't have an availability report because it's not an SEC game, but in seeing these players, is there anything that stands out to you or gives you an inkling that somebody's going to play tonight?
Yeah, I don't think we're going to see Trevor Etienne tonight. He's still dealing with a bit of a rib injury here. Dylan Bell's obviously the most interesting name. Missed last week because of UMass, picked up an ankle injury against Tennessee. We'll see how much they use him. Georgia does have that game next week in the SEC Championship to prepare for there as well. I think the Robinsons at running back are really interesting. It sounds like they're getting closer and closer to playing, so we'll see what they're ultimately able to give tonight in a game where you would expect Georgia Tech to try and shorten this game. And so one way for Georgia to keep Georgia Tech's offense off the field is by running the football. As far as Colby Young, Kirby Smart said on Tuesday, he is still suspended until the legal matters in his case ultimately get taken care of in that regard. It's important to note with Colby Young that while the UGA Equal Opportunities office has cleared him, he is still facing the 2 misdemeanor charges stemming from his October 8th arrest. His arraignment is set for December 10th, so I think that is maybe perhaps the next big date for Colby Young in terms of potentially getting back on the field for this Georgia team.
So in regards to the Robinsons, Roderick and Branson and Dylan Bell, in your mind, is it more important to give them an extra week of rest and then utilize them in the SEC Championship? Or would you, really for the Robinsons, would you rather see them out on the field today and getting some playing time before they head into the SEC Championship?
I think for Dylan Bell, it's a rest-based thing. I know you've got that big SEC Championship game next week. Another week off of that ankle could certainly help there in that regard. As far as the Robinsons, certainly with Roderick Robinson, I think you'd like to see what you have in him. He has not played in the game this season due to a toe injury. And then I would put Branson in that same category. Has not played since the Mississippi State game when he picked up that MCL injury. They like what Nate Frazier has done. He's gotten better, especially since that bye week. And you've seen him play well in games against Florida, against Tennessee, even last week, career high 136 rushing yards against UMass, touchdowns in 4 straight games. But you don't want to put too much on the plate of a freshman, especially in a rivalry game like this. We did see him getting taunting penalty in that game against Florida. So the more the merrier at this running back position. If we're able to get something from guys like Branson and Roderick, I think Georgia certainly takes that tonight against a Georgia Tech run defense that hasn't exactly been all that stout this season.
So before the game, there were some rumors circulating on social media that Aaron Philo, one of the Georgia Tech quarterbacks, might not play tonight because he's already played in 4 games, and they would like to redshirt him. From what you know and from what you've seen and you've heard, is there any truth to that, or is that maybe just kind of a distraction?
The big storyline I think we're watching for early on in this game, Philo has, I think, filled in well for Haynes King, who is just not 100% in this game. And if Georgia Tech thinks that he is 100%, they're able to get everything out of Haynes King, I think that they would just play him that way. But with how well Philo played a week ago against NC State and what he allows Haynes King to sort of do of having that suitable backup option, that's why they played him in here. I think we're going to see Aaron Philo, if only because Brent Key has made it such a strong point that this Georgia game means so much to this Georgia program for 365 days a year. And that you finally get to this game and you're going to redshirt a guy to focus on long-term views and goals. I don't buy that. I think that this game means a ton to this Georgia Tech program. And if they're going to win this game, I think Haynes King is so banged up that they're going to need Aaron Philo to make a few plays in this game.
Yeah, I'm in agreement with you. If Georgia Tech wants to bring their best, I don't think that they bring that without Aaron Philo. And in a world where redshirting doesn't even really matter because you never know when a guy's going to get up and leave, I just don't see that being the case. But it was definitely worth asking. Last thing to you, last game in Sanford Stadium. It's weird to say that it's Friday in Athens today. What would you like to see out of the Dogs as they head into the SEC Championship next week?
I think control this game comfortably, not make it nervy. Look, we know Georgia Tech, they're going to want to shorten this game. There's a reason they're almost a 20-point underdog. So get out to a comfortable lead, maybe make Georgia Tech chase this game a little bit, and don't give them a feeling that going into the fourth quarter they've got a chance to make this a close game. I know you and Cody talked about some doomsday scenarios on DawgNation at large about Georgia potentially losing this game. That's my fault that I wasn't there for that show and able to curtail some of that. But I think this is a game where Georgia control it, take care of business, and then focus on the SEC championship game once you learn the winner of the Texas A&M game tomorrow.
All right, Connor, we'll say goodbye to you, and we will check out your articles on DawgNation.com.
Yep, thanks, Kaylee.
All right, we'll go ahead and let Connor get off the Zoom so I can let you guys know that that is absolutely fake news, a narrative being spun by our very own Connor Riley, who missed our show Dawg Nation at Large on Thursday, so he has no room to speak on this instance. But we will move on from that because we've got the Kroger Dog Walk on our hands. Here is the very first look at the players as they head into Sanford Stadium tonight. Let's see their winter wear that they've got on.
Good Friday night, Dawg Nation. I'm Brandon Adams, and this is our Kroger coverage of the Dog Walk, where the night sky is taking shape here. The temperatures are dropping, and we're getting ready for clean, old-fashioned 8 between Georgia and Georgia Tech. As I said, on the unusual night of Friday here, these Georgia Bulldogs getting ready to make their way into Sanford Stadium right now, making their way through a huge crowd collected around the Tate Student Center parking lot. You've got students starting to make their way in here right now as well. Everybody getting ready. Georgia, a little later getting in here than normal, but the place starting to fill up. Folks starting to get excited. The atmosphere going to be incredible. If you look around the top of the stadium up here, instead of the customary greeting of Saturday in Athens, they're saying it's Friday. And here come the Georgia Bulldogs right now. Tight end Oscar Delp walking through, making his way through. Offensive lineman Xavier Truss getting ready to come through. You see Chaz Chambliss. There's linebacker Jalen Walker walking by. Georgia getting ready for Georgia Tech. Jordan Hall coming through. Wide receiver Arian Smith. Smith, of course, caught a touchdown last week. Georgia hoping for big things from him. The center, Jared Wilson, coming by. Jared Wilson saying some interesting things this week about how much he knows it's important for Georgia to beat Georgia Tech. You saw Todd Hartley come by. Of course, Hartley being rumored to be involved in some head coaching situations here. Mikael Williams, Tate Ratledge went by a moment ago. Ratledge on social media this week challenging Georgia fans. Make a bunch of noise here tonight. Here's Kirby Smart coming through, shaking hands and saying hello to folks. You're going to see Carson Beck walking by as well. Beck rocking some nice boots tonight and a plaid suit. A sharp look for him. Kirby continues to work that rope line. Georgia fans gathered here to see the Georgia Bulldogs as Georgia gets ready for Georgia Tech in the renewal of the rivalry known as clean, old-fashioned hate. Going to see wide receivers coach James Coley coming through. Smile Mondon coming through as well. Mondon this week was certainly asked about. You see Christian Miller walking by. Miller obviously injured and his status a little bit uncertain, but still doing as he does so many times, which is being kind and greeting all these fans. Georgia coming through a little bit more in the way of headgear and warm weather gear, or I should say, warm, clothing for the cold weather that we're seeing here. The Dogs getting ready for a fun one tonight against Tech, what is certainly the regular season home finale and perhaps the last game of this season to be played at Sanford Stadium with the playoff situation still uncertain. Of course, our Kroger Dog Walk coverage is brought to you by our friends at Kroger. You're going to see Dylan Fairchild walking in. He's made a habit of late having the lunch pail. He's got that ready to go. Maybe some Thanksgiving leftovers in that lunch pail for Dylan Fairchild. Here's Branson Robinson coming through. Branson, a guy that folks are thinking maybe he's getting back healthy again, about ready to play again. Certainly walking through and looking sharp right there as he does. Across the way, you see the Dogs continue to file in. Punter Brett Thorson. Georgia looking forward to this. Of course, our Dog Walk coverage brought to you by Kroger. And as you're getting ready for the rest of this holiday season, obviously you enjoyed a great Thanksgiving. Now you get ready for Christmas. Kroger, the place to go for all of that. You can go in store, you can shop online, Kroger.com, become a Kroger Boost member. And to make this Christmas season everything that can be for you and your family, make sure you check out your local Kroger for all of that. Kaylee, we'll send it back to you now as we get ready for the big in-state rivalry game here on a Friday night from Sanford Stadium.
All right, and we thank Brandon Adams for the Kroger Dog Walk. So as we start to wrap up here on DawgNation Game Day, I want to end the show a little bit differently, and most importantly, I want to give some shout-outs because it is our last game here at home, and one of the things that I love about doing home games and doing the show is getting to be at Jittery Joe's. It's our second year of doing this. We were in a new location this year, but getting to have this coffee every week is so special to me. Getting to be in this location surrounded by Georgia fans who you can just tell there's so much excitement for the game. Like, it doesn't get better than this. And also all of the people that allow us to be here, Kane and Grant and their beautiful son Kennedy, or gorgeous daughter Kennedy, and Marcy. It's the hospitality and the friendship and the connection that we've made with them that makes me look forward to being here every Saturday. I so much enjoy getting to spend time with Jeff Santel on the road, but there's certainly something special about being here at home and in this place. And so I just want to say thank you to all of them. And I also want to give a huge shout out to one of the most important people that's here with me on DawgNation Game Day, and that is Smith, who helps me carry all the equipment around, make sure I look okay in the shot, make sure the lighting's great. He does all the heavy work, and I just want to give him the credit because seriously, there would be no DawgNation Game Day or DawgNation Post Game without Smith. So we also have to give him a huge shout out, and a big shout out to all of the guys who are in Atlanta who do the show. Jay, Jack, Danny, Kamal. There's so much work that goes in behind the scenes that a lot of people don't see, and I just want to shout out everyone who makes Game Day what it is, and it really truly takes a village to run this. So thank you to all of you, and all of you that watch as well. It's Thanksgiving week, and one thing I've really reflected on being thankful for this year in particular is all the people that watch DawgNation and make it such a special community. It's not just a media site, it's truly a family, and seeing all the comments and all the events that you attend and just tuning in every week means so much to not just me, but everyone who's a part of DawgNation. So DawgNation, we are thankful for you as well. So I want to wrap it up this way. I want to give a huge shout out to my guy Cody Chaffins, who is quite possibly the best edit maker in the entire world. Each week he does a hype video, but there was something about this one that was definitely a little bit different. You guys know that this game in particular brings up so many emotions for people, not just Georgia fans, but Tech fans. It's being able to brag to your coworkers and all the emotions that come with it. But does it bring up emotions for Kirby Smart? I think Cody Chaffins and DawgNation may have found that answer.
What's your take on rivalry and emotions, feelings for this game?
Yeah, I don't think you get real emotional.
All I want to do is eat. I want you to eat. I want you to eat. I want you to want this. Do you want it? Do you want it? Show me.
You're a lot better, Coach, when you stay composed.
Go out here and that up. Let's take that meeting. I wanted to go play right then. Do your out here. 2 years ago.
It will be an emotional game, but I don't get emotional about it.
Physically, I want to break them. I'm talking about break these on defense and offense.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate y'all.
It is actually embarrassing the amount of times I have watched that video this week. I've shared it with just about everyone I know, and even on my mom's side of the family, it's very divided between Georgia and Tennessee, and every single person got a kick out of that. How could you not want that to be your coach? Very composed in front of the people that he needs to be, but when he gets behind closed doors with his players, you know that it's on, and with as much stuff as Georgia Tech has talked about the Dogs this week, I imagine that Kirby Smart is doing that in the locker room this very second, because despite the fact that Georgia's been on this right side of this rivalry, this game still means so much to so many people, especially for Kirby Smart, who played in this game and needs to remind those guys that, hey, we got to go get that Governor's Cup. This is still clean, old-fashioned hate, and I know that Kirby Smart hates those guys, and you should too. So if you need any more juice before Georgia kicks off at 7:30, just go back and watch that video, or just look up Kirby Smart hype speech, and I guarantee you it's going to get you energized and ready for the game. Once again, I want to thank everyone for watching. I want to thank all the people that make this show happen and make Jittery Joe's happen. It has been another great season here at home, and I can't wait to continue coverage as Georgia goes to the SEC Championship and then goes on the road for the playoff. DawgNation, this is DawgNation. One last time from Jittery Joe's, I'm Kaylee Mansell, and I'll give you a go, Dogs.